Welcome to the Accessibility Summit, sponsored by the Southwest Center on the ADA at ILRU, Independent Living Research Utilization, endorsed by the Joint Council of Extension Professionals, and hosted by the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. I'm Julie Robinson with Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service. We're excited to have Karen McCall with us. Karen is an accessible document design consultant and trainer for Karlen Communications. Karen is the owner of Karlen Communications and has written several books on creating and working with accessible documents, as well as books on how to use Microsoft applications from keyboard. Karen has been working in the field of accessible document design since 1998. Today, Karen is going to be presenting accessible PowerPoint to PDF, and Karen's going to share some high-level overview of the tools and techniques used by presentation authors to create more accessible PowerPoint presentations. So Karen, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you very much. And welcome everyone to this presentation on accessible PowerPoint to PDF. So the goal of this webinar is not that you are going to be able to do everything by midnight tonight. The goal of this webinar is to let you know what tools are available when you do work with PowerPoint in creating both an accessible presentation and an accessible PDF from your presentation. So you have a handout that comes with this and the Word presentation that I did earlier that will go through the step-by-step pieces of information you'll find here, as well as a lot more. Typically when I do PowerPoint, it's a one-day workshop, and this is 1 hour. So don't worry if you feel overwhelmed. That may be expected, but just understand that this is what you can do when you are creating an accessible PowerPoint presentation that can be converted then to accessible PDF. Before you even start, there are some things that you need to consider about your PowerPoint presentation. The first thing is, well, one of the first things is that you're going to use the default placeholders. Now, the places on a slide where you add content are called placeholders, and there are 3 different types of accessible placeholders, and we're going to get into those in a minute. If you do have decorative images, go into the slide master and create a specific slide layout so that those images are in the background. In Word, we talked about the fact that there was no real understanding of null alt text. In PowerPoint, if you put an image on a slide master, the screen readers ignore it, and when you convert the document to tagged PDF, they're automatically generated as artifacts. You want to insert tables, never draw them. You want to provide alt text for your images and use good color contrast. So these are some of the things that you need to take a look at. Even before you start adding content, you also need to consider how you're going to distribute the presentation. If you are going to distribute the presentation as a PDF, you want to avoid using audio and video. Unless you are going to provide a separate website or support document that has a link to the videos. The other thing that you can do if you have created the videos and want to use them is to remove them from the PowerPoint presentation itself and then create an untagged PDF, add the videos, and then tag the PDF. But that can create problems on its own. If you do have audio or video, if you have multimedia, those have to be added to a PDF document before the document is tagged. So you need to figure out exactly what type of content you're going to put into your PowerPoint presentation before you start and its effect on the accessibility. If you are embedding an Excel chart, again, that may come through in your slideshow view as an image with no alt text. Certainly when you convert it to PDF, it will be an image with no alt text. So you will have to add that information. If you just create a regular table in PowerPoint, that is going to be accessible, but once you get to your PDF document, you're going to have to add the TH or table header tags for the column and row titles. If you stick to just the basics, then you shouldn't have any problems. And you also want to avoid animation. I know it sounds restrictive. It's really not that restrictive. You just have to be careful about what you want to do. For those of you who are working in earlier versions of PowerPoint, I'm working in 2016. 2013 also had the larger widescreen slide layout. And it's easy to take your old slide layouts, which were kind of square and did look like index cards, and turn them into a widescreen slide layout. If you have spent time developing a template or a theme that you want to use. And you find that in the design ribbon under variants. This slide has an image at the top that has the old standard size on the left and the new widescreen slide on the right, and then at the bottom it has the area of the design ribbon where you can actually change the size. To demonstrate this, I've taken the old version and converted it to the widescreen, and I've taken the new widescreen and converted it to the old version. When you do decide to do a conversion, you will get a dialog, and what you want to choose is that you ensure the fit. There are two settings when you convert from either widescreen to small screen, for lack of a better word, or small screen to widescreen. And what you want to do is make sure that you choose ensure fit. And that way, almost everything will scale. I say almost everything because you still have to visually check it and make sure that everything did scale. The advantage to using the widescreen is, of course, you have more space, and projectors nowadays actually expect the wider screen view, although there are some conferencing softwares that don't like the widescreen. If you do presentations for Easy, their conferencing software prefers the small screen views. So that's one thing that you can do. You can take your old legacy template and you can spruce it up by bringing it into the new widescreen, which also, again, gives you a little bit more space on your slides. I mentioned at the beginning the importance of using the accessible slide placeholders. And the components on a slide that you enter text in, the default ones are called placeholders. Every slide has a title placeholder, and it's important that you keep that title placeholder, because the title placeholder, when you convert it to PDF, is going to be either a heading 1 or a heading 2. So it's going to provide those navigational points we talked about in the Word session with your PowerPoint presentation. So a lot of people will delete those and then create the same kind of effect with text boxes, and that creates an inaccessible slide presentation. You also want to maintain either the content, or if you're working in the Slide Master, add a text placeholder. And you go into Slide Master through the View ribbon, and Slide Master is where you have all of your slide layouts. You can make modifications to the fonts. You can make modifications to the color. You can add those background images that won't appear to screen readers. If you do want an image to be available to screen readers, you simply put it on the slide. But if you have a decoration or a logo or something you want in the background, create a Slide Master. Slide Master view for me was very scary in PowerPoint 2003, but as of 2007, they made it a little bit easier. Either that or I got used to working in it. And I find that working in Slide Master for me is as easy as just working on a regular slide. This slide has two images. The image on the left is of a text placeholder. And you will find those, as I said, if you go into the Slide Master, and you can add one of those onto your slide master. That will not allow you to click in the middle and add a table, a picture, or any other kind of content. It is a text placeholder. The only thing you can put in that is text. The image on the right is what you normally see when you just add a slide to your document. It is a content placeholder. So both slides have a title placeholder. Slide on the left has a text placeholder. Slide on the right has a content placeholder. And the content placeholder has those images in the middle where you can add different types of content to your slide. Both of these slides will create accessible content in terms of text. And I say that because you can create an inaccessible table. You can add an image with no alt text or a chart with no alt text. It's up to you as the document author when you add additional content how you make that accessible. But by default, these are the three different types of accessible placeholders on slides. There's the title placeholder, which you should always keep on your slide. There is the text placeholder and the content placeholder. As long as you keep those, then your text should be accessible. And as I said with Word, I look at PowerPoint presentations in terms of being optimally accessible because we are learning more about accessibility. Microsoft is adding more tools for accessibility with each iteration of their product. And one of the things, if you are going to upgrade to from 2010, you want to move to 2016 because they are constantly improving the accessibility of their Office applications. This slide is an example of what I talked about in terms of having an image in the background, that when I convert this to PDF, my title is going to be a heading 2. The title is contact. The information to contact me is going to be text. It's going to be a paragraph because I removed the bullets and I specifically made this a paragraph of text. And then the image on the right of the slide is actually on the slide master and will come through as an artifact. So the screen readers and text-to-speech tools won't even see that image. It's a cover of one of my books. I don't think that someone using a screen reader needs to hear cover of blah, blah, blah book. The information that is important on this slide is that this is my contact information. I use the covers of my book, and you'll notice there's another cover up by the word contact. That's also in the background. So for those who are able to take a look at the slide, they're just for decoration. It's a reminder that I do write books. For those of us using screen readers or text-to-speech, the important thing is the text on the slide. And you can decide that as you create your custom slide layouts or as you're adding content to a slide. This is an example of a custom slide layout that I created, and it is included in your handout on the accessible PowerPoint placeholders. And it has a title, How Important is Universal Design? And there is a quote in the middle. Notice there are no bullets with this quote. And I was able to write align my name and the fact that this was an Microsoft MVP statement in an article. So the statement is, without accessibility baked in, all those of us with disabilities have access to are varying sizes of expensive rocks. And that was a quote from an article that I was interviewed in. For quotes in your documents, in your PowerPoints, you want to make sure that they stand out, but you also want to make sure that they look professional. So removing the bullet, having them just stand in the center. I did create a separate slide layout for this so that I don't even have to think about it. I just go up, I go to single paragraph slide layout, this is what I get, and then I can fill it in. So don't be afraid to create or modify some of the slide layouts that you do have in order to meet your needs. Most of the time, all we do is just add a new slide. And we don't actually go up to the home ribbon, to the insert new slide gallery, and take a look at some of the options that we have. For example, we have section breaks, so you don't have to have a slide with a title and 3 subtitles and make it very, very crowded. You can use the section break to Separate information. You'll notice I used one section break in this presentation to separate the body of the presentation from the resources at the end. You have a comparison slide. You do have a slide that has text and a picture. So I urge you to explore the slides that you do have in the slide gallery, the new slide gallery, and not to just depend on that one slide layout that you do have. This slide has an example of a section break, and it's from a presentation that I did. There's information on the left talking about why you would use a section break. An example that I'll give you is a slide that I remediated to be accessible that was talking about a report with 12 key findings, and all 12 key findings were on one slide. It was very crowded, and you really could not distinguish what these very important key findings were. When I remediated it, I created a section called Key Findings, and then each individual finding had a slide of its own. So you could pause as long as you needed to on each slide and talk about it, but there was a section break that said Key Findings. It's a signal to the audience that we've changed topics, and now we're going to look at either key findings, or if I'm doing a webinar that talks about both Word and PowerPoint, I start out with a section break for Word, and then I let people know, okay, now we've changed to with this section break, we're going to talk about PowerPoint. So using the section breaks are an effective tool that will let you break up your slide presentation. The section break slide is accessible. The title on it will become a heading 1. The text on it will become a paragraph heading. So don't be afraid to use the section breaks. That's what they're there for. You can also modify an existing slide layout to meet your needs. One of the things that I see most often is that someone needs a slide with a subtitle. And normally what they do is they just take everything off of the slide and then they start adding text boxes. One of the things that I do is to use the comparison slide and modify it. For those of you who have not seen the comparison slide, there is a slide title or title placeholder, but then we have 4 other placeholders on this slide. And as someone tabs through the content on this slide, they're going to move from the title placeholder into that first placeholder on the left, which is going to be the top of the first piece of content you're comparing. Tab again is going to take you into that list of first things that are going to be compared. Tab again is going to take you over to the right to the title of the next set of things you're comparing. And then the final tab is going to take you into the things that you are comparing. When I convert this to tagged PDF, it is going to read in its logical reading order. It's going to have the title placeholder, which will be a heading 2, and then it's going to have the a paragraph, the list of things you're comparing, another paragraph, and the list of things you're comparing. So don't be afraid to use the comparison slide to compare things. If you do need a subtitle, what I did was I took that comparison slide layout, I removed the 2 placeholders on the right, and then just extended the remaining 2 over to the right. So now I have a space on this slide for a title, a subtitle, and then my bulleted points underneath that subtitle. So by using the section break as a signal that we're going to change topics, and then using this type of reconfiguring of a comparison slide, I can fit more content on. It looks professional, and it makes my point without being too cluttered. It's important to use templates, and I would say in PowerPoint, themes are also as powerful as templates. In fact, the one thing I like about PowerPoint is that I can create a slide template and then save it as a theme, so that if I'm starting with a new document, or I'm starting with a document that already has a look and feel to it, I can go up to my themes gallery in the design ribbon and immediately change the theme. And the templates and themes in PowerPoint are linked a little bit more intricately than they are in Word, so that if I do create those custom slide layouts in PowerPoint and I save my template as a theme, those slide layouts are going to be available when I apply that theme. So I'd start by creating a template, and I can do that by using one of the onboard templates and modifying it, and then when I have it the way that I want, I simply go up to the design ribbon, the themes gallery, and save it as a theme. In order to use a template for a new presentation, you go through the file Backstage area, and there is a templates gallery. I will tell you that Microsoft is working on creating accessible templates. However, I've found that some of the ones that they've identified as being accessible aren't really. For example, there is a template in Word about a business trip that you can chronicle all of your expenses, but they've used a table for design layout, which is something that we avoid doing. So even though you may come across a template in PowerPoint that says it's accessible, you really need to know about accessibility to make that determination and take a look at the parts of it that may not be accessible and whether you want to include those in the template or not. The themes gallery, if you notice, looks a lot like the templates gallery, except with the themes, you can apply them to an existing presentation. So for example, if I open a presentation I did 5 years ago, which has a different look and feel to it, and I want to update it, I could come to my themes gallery, choose the Karlen theme, and apply it to the old template. It would spruce it up. It would have the wider screen setting, and I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time working with the PowerPoint presentation in order to update it. So the themes and templates are important in terms of the bling that you bring to your presentation. I will tell you before we go any farther that there are instructions in your handout on how to create your presentation in Microsoft Word in case you're distracted by all of the eye candy and the images. So if you do have a learning or cognitive disability, or you have trouble organizing your thoughts, you can create your PowerPoint presentation in Word, send that information to PowerPoint, and then add all of the bling and the eye candy, all of the design. With your templates and themes, if you don't like the font or you don't like the color, you can always go in and change it. You would do this under themes. Themes have 4 parts to them. There is the theme itself, then there are theme colors, theme fonts, and theme effects. The things that you can modify are the theme fonts and the theme colors. And again, this is found in the design ribbon under the variants category. So if you have a slide presentation and you say, well, I don't really like that color palette, you can go to the theme colors and you will get a list of all of the available color palettes. You can choose from one of those, and this is all keyboard accessible. If you don't like the fonts of the presentation, either the template or the theme that you have on your presentation, you can then go to the design ribbon variants, the fonts, and get a gallery of all of the fonts that would be available to you, all of the font combinations. So by opening either a template or applying a theme, you can take a look at it and say, well, I really don't like the color palette, I'm going to change it. I really don't like the fonts, I'm going to change them. If you don't see anything in the themes gallery for color or fonts, you can then go back to the slide master and do things on your own. One of the things that I find most common in the slides, as well as poor contrast, and it does come under poor contrast, is that often you will have links that don't really have good color contrast. So you can select one of the theme colors. If you right-click or use the application key, you can find a modify, and you can go in and modify any of the colors. At the bottom, you can't see it because I've got it blocked out. I've opened up one of the color palettes in the image on the left. There is an ability to rename. So for example, I have a color palette that is called Dark Blue Link, and it is a color palette that I liked except for the color of the links, which was like a pale yellow, so nobody could see them. I went in, I modified it, I made the link color the usual blue, and I called it, I think it was blue link color. You can see that as you rename anything that you modify, the image on the right shows that it would now appear in that list of color palettes that are available for you to use with any of your slide presentations. Color contrast, and this is a bit away from the PDF accessibility, although maybe not. Color contrast in terms of your slide presentations is the biggest barrier, aside from things that aren't accessible, components that aren't accessible. So you really need to pay attention to the slide background, especially if you're adding things yourself, if you are customizing the color yourself. This slide has two images on it. The one on the top left is kind of a salmony pink with lighter gray text on it, so you do have some readability issues, and I believe there is a pattern in the background. The one in the lower right, that although the text is dark and the background is blue, the background has swirls in it, so you would basically go cross-eyed if you looked at it. So making sure that you don't have to use every tool in PowerPoint when it comes to color and color contrast, that sometimes less is more. And making sure that your slides, in terms of designing them, are streamlined, that there isn't a lot of decoration that overlaps the text, and that things are clear. As I mentioned before, not all of the templates that come and themes that come with PowerPoint are accessible. This is an example of 3 different themes that are not accessible. And I ran all 3 of these through the color contrast analyzer, which you do have available, and it is free, and they all failed because there was a very poor color contrast between the text and the background. So I did provide a link in the handout of the slides for this presentation. You do have the link to download the color contrast analyzer. It is free, and it is most dependent. So I will let you know that it is most dependent. It has eyedroppers on it, and you take the eyedropper with your mouse and put it on the text, take the other eyedropper, put it on your background, and it gives you a luminosity rating as well as a color blindness rating. And this one passed 3, but not the 4th. Ideally, you want everything to pass. I went through the link colors of all 3 of these templates that come with PowerPoint, and all 3 failed. So the one on the left has an orange background with kind of a yellowy colored link, and that failed. The one in the center is a red with a white, and that failed because of the color of red. Also notice that the center one, which is the main event template, uses all caps, and all caps are the most difficult font styles to use for anyone with or without a disability. So not only would you not want to use this, but if you are using any template where you do have all caps, you want to go into the slide master, and wherever you see the all caps, you want to change those to either title case or just uncheck the all caps. The image on the right, while the background is white, the text and the link are very pale, and again fail the color contrast analyzer test. So you want to make sure that whatever you are using, you run it through the color contrast analyzer to make sure that you have good color contrast, because it is going to affect the readability of your audience, but also the readability of the PDF document once it's converted. The other thing to take note of on your slides is not to have a background that overwhelms your images. If you are going to use images on your slide presentations, you want to make sure that the background complements images and that your images are not lost in the background. This slide has an image of a slide that has a very kind of dark charcoal gray. The text is white, so there's contrast there, but the image is a black and white image and gets lost in the overwhelming charcoal gray of the background. So you want to make sure that if you are going to be using color for background, that you think about the images you're going to be putting on the slide and whether they're going to be overwhelmed by the background or not. When this gets converted to PDF, while alt text for this image will come through, so those of us who are using screen readers or text-to-speech will be able to clearly identify the image. Anyone who's using screen magnification or has a learning or cognitive disability may not be able to distinguish the information of that image because it's overwhelmed by the background. Outline and save as outline are the ways that you create your alternate format for your presentation. And it's also a really good key to determining which parts of your presentation are going to be accessible and which aren't. You can take your presentation and go to File, Save As, and save it as an outline, and that will take the information in the title placeholders and your text or content placeholders and convert that to an RTF or rich text format. I then generally will resave it as a docx file. With the outline, you can create Braille or large print, and that's why it's important to know that that exists. So if you go through the File Backstage area and go to Save As, you give your file a name, and then you would tab once, or you would go to the Files of Type and choose Outline or RTF. You could also press F12 and simply go to your Save As dialog and do exactly the same thing. So there are two ways that you can do it. Once you save it as outline, it is saved as an RTF file. You can open it in Word, and then you can make any modifications. I usually create headings, and anything that has been in text boxes, I will copy and paste into the Word document so that once I'm finished remediating the PowerPoint to be accessible, I also have my alternate format, and I provide both of those to my clients so that they don't, if they do get requests for large print or Braille, then they already have the document that they can work with. This part of it does not have anything to do with tagged PDF unless you want to take that Word document of your PowerPoint presentation and convert it to tagged PDF, in which case you would have an alternate version of your PowerPoint presentation. It's up to you. The outline view can be found under the view ribbon. Switch to outline view and it replaces the thumbnails that you see along the left-hand side. So on this slide I have an image of a slide presentation that I did, and I've opened the outline view to replace the thumbnails, and it shows all of the text that is on all of the slides in my presentation. So all of the text that's in that outline view is going to be converted to the rich text document that I can open in Word. I bring this to your attention, and I use outline view as a tool to check the accessibility of my document, because if you notice on this slide, I have two slides in my presentation, and I've isolated the outline view. On the second slide, I have used a text box. So notice that when you look to the right and you see the slide that does have the correct title placeholder, there's nothing underneath it. So if I were to create Braille or large print, I would have to copy and paste that information from the text box into my Word document. With text boxes too, as you convert your document to, or your presentation to tagged PDF, because text boxes are objects that float kind of over the text layer, the conversion tools will often go, oh, text box, where does it go, where does it go? Oh, I think I'll put it here. And you may end up with a lot of cleanup and rearranging on your in your tagged PDF, because as objects that float, the conversion tools often don't know exactly where do you want it, so I'll just put it someplace. We're also looking at creating more accessible PowerPoint so that we can create more accessible PDF, but we can also provide alternate text to those who need it. And we don't want to spend a lot of time fixing things that are broken. And generally text boxes are not accessible. SmartArt is problematic as well. And it's one of the reasons I gave you the resource on creating accessible images for PowerPoint. What I generally do with the SmartArt is to create it so that it has the inherent properties of my slide color palette, but then I use either the Windows clipping tool Windows snipping tool or the OneNote clipping tool and make a single image out of it that I can provide alt text with. Part of the problem with SmartArt is, depending on which one you use, there are components that you cannot add alt text to, and so someone who is coming through the SmartArt object is going to lose the ability to understand the relationship. When this gets converted to tagged PDF, the SmartArt object will also come through as a single image that will require alt text. Now you can put alt text on the SmartArt object itself. On a slide presentation though, we can tab into each component of that SmartArt. So this is one of the instances where when I convert this to tagged PDF, that's going to be a single image. I've provided alt text for it, so it actually becomes more accessible in the PDF document than it is in the PowerPoint presentation. And notice on the right with the outline view, the SmartArt object is not represented in that outline view. One of the things that I do when I remediate, because often I have to copy things out of text boxes. I had to remediate one PowerPoint presentation where there were 23 text boxes on a single slide. And it took me a long time to figure out exactly what order the content on that slide should be read in. And it's an example that I use of a bit of overkill. So one of the things that I do with my slide presentations is to make sure I always use the 3 accessible placeholders. I always add alt text for my images. If I am using a table, I insert a table. But while I'm remediating the PowerPoint presentation to be more accessible, I also create that RTF or Word document so that when I pass the accessible PowerPoint presentation back to my client, they also have that Word document in case they need it for Braille or large print. I will actually copy the images over to that Word document as well, because I know there are some people who do not like PowerPoint, and simply because you have to tab through all of the components on a slide, and they prefer Word because they can navigate it easier. So that is one of the things that I do for my clients. Bullets and numbering, you always want to use the bullets and numbering galleries for slide presentations. By default, you're going to have bullets. If you want numbering, you can easily select the list on a slide, go up to the home ribbon and choose any of the items from the numbering gallery so that your bulleted items are now numbered. That's the way that you're going to do it in order to make more accessible bullets and numbering. Now, one of the things that people often like is a little bit more space between the bullets on a slide. Now, I'm just going to go back for a minute. Notice that on this particular slide design, there is more space between each bulleted item. They're not kind of squished together. And that's part of the slide layout that I chose for this presentation. But if you do have a slide where you do have things that appear to be a little squished and you aren't writing an essay on your slide, then you can select the list on a slide and go up to the home ribbon, go to the paragraph dialog, and adjust the space below the bulleted or numbered item. You don't want to adjust the space above because the space above is usually okay. Really what you need is the space between each item, starting with the space between the first and second. So you only want to adjust the spacing below each bulleted item so that it gives you a little bit more space. You have to be careful doing this, and I mentioned that you do not write an essay on a slide. You can put maybe 4, maybe 5 bullet points on the slide. Once it starts getting a little bit cramped, you want to start another slide. And you'll notice that sometimes in my presentations, both the Word one and this one, if I have to continue a topic, I will simply put a -1 and a -2 or -3 after it, because I want to make sure that all of my slide titles are unique. Because someone who gets this as a PDF document, or even as my Word document, is going to be able to navigate by heading. And if you have 3 headings that are all the same, then there isn't an easy way to navigate. Whereas if I put the -1, for example, alt text -1, alt text -2, then they know that it's a continuation of the topic, but it's not the same slide that they're going to. And going back to the discussion about outline, when I create those headings in Word, after the heading for each slide, I put which slide number it is. So for example, this one, the title is Paragraph Dialog in PowerPoint, and it is slide 34. So I would make that a heading, and then I would put I would put in brackets after it slide 34, so that when someone gets that list of headings in the Word document or in the PDF not in the PDF, in the Word document, they would know exactly which slide they're going to. This is a slide that shows an example of a bulleted list where I have added the space after the bulleted items just to make it the text on the slide stand out a little bit. And you can see I have 3 bullet points here. 2 of them are quite text heavy, but adding that little bit of space between them makes them stand out, and it doesn't seem as crowded as it would be if I hadn't put the space below them. In PowerPoint, you also want to make sure that you put alt text on your images, and you would right-click, Format Picture. The Format Picture pane is going to open, and you provide information in the description. You want to make sure that your description is concise. And here is where, again, you have to decide how it is you're going to distribute your presentation. If you have a complex image, generally what I will do is write a description of the complex image. I will attach it to the PDF. So the alt text for this image, which is a picture of an iceberg that has some descriptive text about procedure and process. The alt text for this would be, this is a complex image. There is an attachment to this PDF with a long description, and I would give the file name, so that someone knows that this is complex. It's going to take more than the room that I have here in alt text. And so I've provided an additional detailed document attached to this PDF. The next question I know is going to be, well, how many characters can you put in alt text? You always want to make your alt text as brief as possible. So you want to make sure that the alt text supports what you're talking about in your PowerPoint presentation or in your Word document. Anything really complex, if you're only going to be distributing the slide presentation in slide layout, the normal slide view, you can put the description in the notes pane and just let people know that, you know, for slides where you have complex images, the descriptions are going to be in the notes pane. That may also be helpful if you convert the document to tagged PDF, because the content in the notes pane is not tagged as well. So you can simply copy and paste the description of the complex image into a Word document and attach that to your PDF document. For tables, slightly different than Word. In Word, we did have a lot of options to improve the accessibility of a table, not so much in PowerPoint. But in PowerPoint, again, you do not want to draw a table. You do not want to use tables for design layout on a slide, and you want to insert the slide using the table gallery in the insert ribbon. You also have the ability to get the insert table dialog and decide how many columns and rows that you want to put on the table in your slide. This slide has an example of a table. Unlike Word, you cannot do the header rows repeat because tables don't span more than one slide. You can add alt text to it, and you can't identify column and row titles as well. So you are limited in what you can do with tables in PowerPoint. Again, make sure the color contrast for the table is good. If it isn't, you can go in to change it in your color palette, and make sure that you're only using tables for data. Alt text for tables is found in the format shape. Yes, I don't know why it's format shape. I think it's just because of the way that tables are generated in PowerPoint. But when you right-click or use the application key, instead of format picture, you're looking for format shape. You're going to go to the same place. And as I have mentioned, you don't need to put a title. The important thing is a description. And again, for alt text for tables, the description would be to describe whether it is a uniform table or whether it has merged or split cells, if there are any anomalies with the table. Links, I approach links a little bit differently in PowerPoint. While I like the contextual links, I realize that there are times when people in the audience are writing links down and they want to know what the links are. You'll notice in the slide on the color contrast analyzer, I did put the long URL. We don't have the concept of footnotes in PowerPoint, so by providing contextual links, which I normally would, I can't then support the contextual link with a footnote and give someone the long URL. So I create the long URLs when I convert the document to PowerPoint, to PDF. I can then go to the link tag and add alt text, and someone would have access to both the alt text and the long URL. So for PowerPoint, I treat it a little bit differently. I also generally only put the links at the end of a presentation. I put the links for the color contrast analyzer at the point when I talked about the color contrast analyzer, because again, knowing that this was going to be converted to tagged PDF and that we were going to have a webinar, I wanted to make sure that as I talked about color contrast, the tool that you are going to need is right there for you. But other resources you'll see at the end I have put in a section called resources, and the links are there. So generally I put the links at the end in a section called resources, first so that people aren't going and surfing the internet while I'm speaking, but it also provides a concise place. Everybody knows that any resources for webinars and presentations that I do are going to be at the end, so you don't have to go sifting through every slide looking for a link or a web address. You insert a link the same way. Now, if you are selecting text and making a contextual link, you simply select the text, and Control-K opens the insert hyperlink dialog. You can copy and paste your URL, but normally what I do in PowerPoint is simply copy and paste the URL into the slide content placeholder so that the long URL is there. The selection pane is one of your most valuable tools in PowerPoint because it allows you to arrange the objects on a slide. So the placeholders, yes, they're called objects. It gets a little bit confusing, but they are also called objects. So if you have a title placeholder, you have your content placeholder, well, as we do on this slide. Okay, so this slide, you have the title selection pane, you have the text about the selection pane, and then you have the image of where to find the selection pane over to the right, and you have a slide number in the lower right. If I were to open the selection pane, what would happen is my title is going to be at the bottom. I know it's counterintuitive, go figure. Not sure why they did this. So you start from the bottom with the title. So from the title, I should go to the text. From the text, I should, in the logical reading order, go to the picture. And then after the picture, I should go to the slide number, which is at the very top. So on the left, I have the selection pane for a slide. And then on the right, I have the last slide we were on, and to show the logical reading order. Sometimes if you only have images on a slide, so for example this slide, the reading order is going to depend on which image you put first. So for example, if you put the image of the slide and then you put the picture of the selection pane, but then you decided, well, they don't really look right that way, I need to mix them up. In the selection pane, they are going to appear in the order in which you put them on this slide. So for every slide, you need to go to the selection pane, make sure that your title is followed by the text, or that the title is followed by the logical image that you want them to go to. In this case, it's the selection pane followed by the example of the slide, followed by the slide number. You can do this on your slide master. So as you're getting your slide master layout ready, if you're developing something new, run it through the selection pane and make sure it's in its logical reading order. Also, as with Word, you do have an accessibility checker. So you can check the accessibility. What it's going to look for are the long URLs and any images without alt text. As you correct things, they are going to disappear from this list, which is a nice feature. With this also, you need some kind of human intuition. So for example, in this slide presentation and in the footnotes in my Word documents, all of the long URLs are going to be flagged as perhaps needing alt text. But I have provided contextual links in Word. I purposely put the long URLs here in PowerPoint so people would be able to find them, and so I ignore that in the accessibility checker. So part of checking for accessibility is knowing what parts of your slide are accessible, and when you get the accessibility checks, again, because they are automated, you want to make sure that you understand what your audience is going to need or want, and what you need for your presentation. I would also briefly mention, because I know we're running out of time, the stamp tool, which allows you to caption your slideshows. So if you are distributing a slideshow, you do have a tool that is an add-on, and there is a link here to it for PowerPoint that will allow you to caption. PowerPoint to accessible PDF. Where to start? At the moment, this is a real dog's breakfast of tags. If you use the ability in Microsoft to save as PDF, there is a lot of garbage tags you're going to get. But you don't get bookmarks. So you have your headings, but you don't get bookmarks. If you use the Adobe Acrobat add-in, you still get a lot of garbage tags, but you also get bookmarks. So at the moment, the Acrobat add-in is giving you the most accessible PDF because it is adding the bookmarks. And you don't have to go and manually add those. When you do convert your PowerPoint to PDF, one of the things that you need to do is to go to the language setting, which is in the document properties of your PowerPoint document, and make sure that the language is plain English or plain French or plain Spanish. Because I'm in Canada, I know you couldn't tell by the accent, the language comes up as EN-CA, Canadian English. So not that our English is that much different, but it would force someone who's using a British sounding synthesizer with their screen reader or text-to-speech tool to listen to it in a different pronunciation. So as long as I put plain English, it's going to let people use whatever English synthesizer they want to use, whether it's British pronunciation, Australian pronunciation, or American pronunciation. It's the same with French or Spanish. You want to use the plain vanilla languages in order to not force someone to read your PDF documents with pronunciations that they're not familiar with. So those are the two tools that you have. That if you buy Adobe Acrobat and we're at DC, you can use the Acrobat ribbon to convert to PDF. Your links will come through, your images will come through, except the ones that you have put on your slide masters, they'll come through as artifacts. And the section breaks and the title slide for your presentation will come through as H1s or heading 1s, and everything underneath it will be H2s. So from PowerPoint, you basically have the two levels of headings. Very quickly, I have given you some resources, and there are some free things on the Karlen Communications website. There is also the document that I provided to Julie so that you have access to that talks about everything we did today. I do have 2 books that are out, Styles in Word, which is a primer for accessible document design, and the 4th edition of Accessible and Usable PDF Documents, which was first published in 2005. And now has a 4th edition. The information on purchasing those is here. If you have any questions after this webinar, please contact me at info, I-N-F-O, at karlencommunications.com, K-A-R-L-E-N, communications.com. Again, there are free things on the Karlen Communications website. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at KarlenInfo with a capital K and a capital I.
Thank you, Karen, for joining us today, and thank you to our participants for joining us as well.